We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Very pumped for the second rendition of our new segment. Obviously, Sigmund Bloom is with us for 3 studs, 3 duds. We're going to talk through some of the relevant players for Week 14 fantasy football and DFS that might be especially high or low in our hopes for this one. So I say that, obviously, because I get to do it with one of my good friends, good buddy, co-owner of footballguys.com. Sigmund Bloom, how are you, man? I feel like so every time we talk, it feels like it's been weeks because so much has happened,
Right.
right? So how was your Week 13 for you?
It was okay. Actually, with 3 games still to go, there's a lot of sweating. There's some playoffs. I hope to advance in the Scott Fish Bowl. And I think this is a good test of how fantasy football gives us its own normalcy in the midst of a lack of normalcy. If you were waking up this morning and your first thought wasn't something about coronavirus or some way that your life was changing and instead was about, am I going to go with Lamar Jackson or not? I've been waiting, or we're going to go with Ben Roethlisberger. Then it felt kind of normal for Week 13 because we're sweating.
Yeah, I mean, if that's like your toughest decision of the week, I'd say that your 2020 is going better than a lot of people. So this has been a cool segment. I know we got a lot of good feedback on it last week, but like 6 players, like we got to jump into it to get through all of these guys. So stud number 1 for Week 14, Russell Wilson. Obviously a really good matchup for him, but I'll let you dive into why he's one of your 3 studs.
I just think this is that moment. And I think this affects DFS too. This is that moment where I think everybody's out on him. In your typical redraft leagues, you're probably starting him in your playoff matchups. Probably, I don't know though. But certainly for DFS, it is the matchup. Even though Greg Williams is gone, I don't know how that's going to affect things. I just think this is one of those situations where even if Russell Wilson, because we can remember before Russ was allowed to cook, someone brought up the what was it, the pre-fee menu, where even if maybe he wasn't allowed to cook a lot, but he made some masterpieces. So even if he gets like 20 or 25 attempts with DK and Tyler Lockett, that could certainly be enough to get 3-4 touchdowns, 250, 300 when the game is in hand. So I think this is a big get right week for him.
Yeah, I think that people don't really understand that some of these like types of situations, they happen all year long, and it's trying to identify them again, right? So this happened, I don't know what week it was, but when Kansas City played against the Jets, and people are like, oh, this is going to be a blowout. You can't play this game in DFS because you're only going to get Mahomes for a half. And what did he do? He went out there, threw like his 4 touchdowns or whatever it was, and all the people that won tournaments that week were the ones that had the triple stacks with Mahomes and maybe just like a cheaper bring back on the Jets side. So it doesn't mean that you can't play these situations. So I'm on board with Russ for sure, especially like you said, like the added bonus of people being down on him in general. This is a great spot to go back to him. I mean, no one on the Jets can stop DK Metcalf. No one on the Jets can probably stop Lockett in general. So if they get even like you said, if you think that he's going to get up to like that 30 attempts range, like he's still a fantastic play this week. So on the other side of the spectrum, your first dud for Week 14, one of my boys, Kyler Murray. Sounds like he's still not quite right. Only 15 rushing yards last week. Didn't throw for many yards. Did have 3 touchdowns. But talk about Kyler Murray as a dud in Week 14.
Well, that 3 touchdowns is what went on, right? But one came off of a muffed punt, basically. You had the Dan Arnold. His other touchdown was right off the bat, and then it was a while before Kyler Murray had his next completion. And the Giants defense. The Giants defense, I think, announced themselves yesterday, their presence as one of the forces to be reckoned with, and I think they announced themselves as a team that might have a first round home playoff game, and one that certainly is not going to be an easy out. So I think that Kyler Murray's 3 touchdowns hides that he's still struggling. Also, that the Rams are still a good defense. We could watch them Thursday against New England, and it also means that this might be a week where Kyler Murray, depending on your other quarterback and your fantasy league for the first week of the playoffs, maybe this is a week to put him on the bench.
Yeah, it's been unfortunate to watch my Cardinals just kind of give back, I guess, like everything they kind of built over the beginning. I mean, we're talking about these guys as someone like a team that could go far in the playoffs and surprise some people. And I always kind of get like, I live in Minnesota now, so I give people some crap like, oh, Minnesota, yeah, you guys will be just good enough to not get a good draft pick, but not good enough to do anything that really matters in the playoffs. And now it kind of seems like maybe the Cardinals are falling into that category as well, which is never a fun place to be overall. So let's move on. Stud number 2. Allen Robinson. He's a guy that can get through any matchup, of course. People probably down on this offense as a whole, but tell us why Allen Robinson's a guy in week 14 you're going back to.
So we felt the seismic ripple of Will Fuller's suspension. And if you were following it, it led you to Kiki Cutie. I don't have my socks on. I wore them last night for the show. They're getting dirty. I gotta wash my Kiki Cutie socks. Yeah. But we're gonna be wearing them again this year, I think. Even Chad Hansen. But what was lost in that, Joe? Bradley Roby also had a 6-game suspension handed down, and he was the kind of linchpin of that secondary in so much as there was one. So now you look at this, and look, Mitchell Trubisky is still playing like Mike Glennon. This is my last chance, maybe. He's playing with less fear and let her rip. And Al Robinson, there's nobody on Houston secondary that's going to be able to check him. So this could be a really big game for Allen Robinson. I suppose, by implication, I don't want to put David Montgomery there another week. But David Montgomery, even Mitchell Trubisky, I think we can see that this Houston defense is one we want to pick on when we're setting our lineups.
Patreon is something that we're very focused on as a community. So it's our Discord chat community. Fantasy sports, daily fantasy sports, sports betting, all that good stuff. We do have a weekly DraftKings tournament. We kind of pivoted that from a $30 Amazon gift card to now whatever. It's kind of up to you guys in some ways. The amount of ratings and reviews that we get on Apple Podcasts, I'm going to add $1 to the prize pool for everyone that we get throughout the week. So that's going to be one thing that we're watching. There's a Red Zone stream room in there. So if you want to continue to kind of hang out with us off of stream, watch the games together, we'll be in there. And then an exclusive 15 to 30 minute live stream directly before kickoff. So that's only in Discord for the Patreons, $1 per month, 25 cents per week. Come join our great community if you haven't already, and you won't regret it. So this next one, Sig, Jared Goff. Is this a Monday night or Sunday night football game? I'm trying to pull up what his salary might be. It might not be on the main slate unless I'm completely blind, but obviously a lot of season-long implications. Sounds like he's the guy that you're not too excited about this week either.
No, and I think the key here is with Goff, it's just been difficult to time his up weeks and his down weeks. It's a Thursday night game.
Thursday night, yep.
So this is like your showdown slate and things like that. And also making the other thing about this is in your week 14 playoff matchups, you have to make your decision on him early. So the thing here is we all remember that Bill Belichick was the one that basically unmasked Goff. And we just saw him continue to hold school for young quarterbacks. Certainly if you had divin that, well, it's going to be a long afternoon for the Chargers offense because of Bill Belichick. You at least eliminated some of the zonks from week 13. I think the Rams, until we see Sean McVay and Jared Goff show, it's the first time that they've met since that matchup. So until we see them, so they can get the drop on Belichick, I'm going to assume that Belichick's going to get the drop on them. That this includes like Cam Akers. This includes really all of your Rams plays. I would definitely be betting the under in that game.
Yeah, I kind of missed out on the Patriots defense last week. I miss out on some of these narratives sometimes too. Sometimes you get a little bit too deep into the weeds looking at the data and you just forget like a rookie quarterback against Bill Belichick. That's probably a decent spot to attack. So that's interesting. I'm actually glad you brought up Goff in this game overall because this week we're actually going to be adding a live stream. Myself, Peter Overzak, going to be going live to talk about this Thursday night football game from a showdown perspective. That's going to be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on this channel, obviously right before the main slate breakdown on the Line Movement channel. So make sure you guys, if you haven't checked out any of the showdown content, that we're going to be starting that stream on Thursdays if you're watching this a little bit later. So stud number 3, Sig. Your boy Rob Gronkowski. I'll say this, like I always talk about how I started my fantasy football kind of journey by watching football guys, by listening to football guys. You guys were so big on Rob Gronkowski that he was like one of my favorite players, like when I was like kind of coming up in fantasy and all that stuff. He's still kicking around. He's still someone that Tom Brady really trusts. So it sounds like he's a guy you're willing to put all your hopes and dreams, your playoff hopes into Rob Gronkowski in week 14.
And what we're watching here is the last few weeks before the bye, Gronk was making Gronkian plays. Those plays whenever he gathers in the ball over his shoulder and drags a guy for a few yards or runs someone over. He's got the speed to get downfield now. And They're going to face Minnesota. Let's watch in this one Eric Kendrick's status. He was a late scratch, like injured himself in warmups. But he's the best coverage linebacker that Minnesota has. So that then gets Todd Davis on the field. That then allows the middle of the field to become a part of the field that Tom Brady can attack. And I just think that coming out of the bye, you go back to comfort food. That's Rob Gronkowski. That's Brady to Gronkowski. They need this win. If the Bucks lose this game, I know you're lamenting the Cardinals. I mean, there's a log jam right now down there in the NFC at the bottom of the playoff standings, and this is a really important game. And for Minnesota, this is obviously an important game too. They're at 6-6, so this is kind of a play-in game, if you will. Yeah. Like we may look back and see who misses the playoffs and say it's because they didn't win this game. So all these things converge to me at Rob Gronkowski.
Big game for fantasy implications for sure. There's a little bit of pace to this game overall as well. I guess my problem, with the Tampa Bay side is it's just so spread out sometimes in general. Yeah. It's hard to figure out the exact guy to go to from a DFS perspective. But I guess we're going to stay in this game for your dud number 3, Sig. So Dalvin Cook, this is big because he's 9,400. They haven't priced him down much. He's still just seeing crazy volume throughout these games. Had a little bit of a down game. Like they're just trying to get him a touchdown when they could have just kicked a field goal. Did you watch the end of that game last week, Sig? They're just coming up. I thought they were going to kick a field goal like 5-6 plays before that, and they were trying to get Dalvin Cook in the end zone. So that was scary. But it sounds like he's a guy that you're a little bit down on this matchup against Tampa Bay.
Well, first of all, Cook, they're just working him to death. And as I've said before, he doesn't play the game in a way to sacrifice any punishment. So I worry. He would bristle at the idea that he's beat up, as the team said that. But the other thing is, it's the Tampa run defense, and we're going to defer to them. Now, maybe the one time that it didn't work out was in week 2 when Christian McCaffrey had 2 touchdowns. But we can look, and Alvin Kamara had 2 touchdowns against them. He rushed for 16 yards on 12 carries. Aaron Jones had 15 yards on 10 carries. Josh Jacobs had 17 yards on 10 carries. We saw the last week against the last game out against the Chiefs. Even the Chiefs only amounted 59 rushing yards against them. This is just the best rush defense in the league. And what it should lead to, really, you invert this. Because what it means is, now, will we have rational coaching from Minnesota? Because I think the right answer is you don't even challenge the Tampa run defense. Why? Why would you do that? This is a week for your Cousins, Jefferson, Thielen stack. We saw Tampa's pass defense at different times this year have just colossal failures against good downfield receivers. Remember, that's one of the games that we really saw Justin Herbert announce himself to the league. So this just feels like a game. If the play calling is rational, it might not be a Dalvin Cook game. It should be. Kirk Cousins is playing excellent football right now. Yes. This is obviously a big game for us to figure out how we feel about it before we set our lineups.
Yeah, I like it. I think that one of the things we almost always talk about is this Tampa Bay run defense. Like, I don't care as much about, I guess, the defensive side of things at running back, because we know volume is king, but it does matter at the tails. Like the best teams in the league, the worst teams in the league, that matters for sure. So that would be in the category of one that let's just keep an eye on it. 9,400. We'll see where ownership is at throughout the end of the week. I still think I would take a shot on that if he ends up being super low. But we'll see overall. So Sigmund Bloom, everyone, he's a co-owner at Football Guys. Follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom if you haven't already. Of course, like Football Guys, this is a big time of the year. If you're looking for that edge in your playoff weeks, check out everything they have going on over there. Sig, I know you got a big game going on right now that you got to go catch up on. I appreciate the time, my man, and we'll see you next week, man. Hopefully you advance in the Scott Fish Bowl. That's always a fun one to be in, I'm sure.
Yeah, and hopefully we don't have any Monday afternoon football. Not that I'm not looking forward to this one.
Every time. All right, talk to you later, Sig.